we're going to look at the beginning of Scripture, the very first verse in the Bible. Genesis 1, verse 1. Says this, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Goes on, says, the earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Now there's right in here is something that many people do not consider. And it's what theologians call the gap theory. The gap theory is that we don't know what happened between verse 1 and verse 2. We have no clue, right? We just read it. We read through it like, okay, this is great information, whatever. But listen to how it's phrased. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Then it says the earth was formless and empty. We have no idea how long the universe existed between these two verses. It could have been moments. It could have been millions or billions of years. We have absolutely no idea. Anyone that claims they has an idea about this really has no idea what they're talking about. They're just making a speculation without any observable evidence to back the claims that they have. So, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, let there be light, and there was light. I mean, this must have been a miraculous thing. God says, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light was good. Then he separated the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness night. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the first day. So, the main argument that we tend to come up against in the conversation of science in the Bible is this. Did God create everything? Did he create everything or not? There's two main worldviews, okay? The one main worldview is this. Yes, God created everything. The other is over here. Nope, God didn't do it. You know, that's the two main. Now there's some deviations over here. They say, well, we don't know if it was God, but we think some intelligent creature, some intelligent being created, but that there was a creation event. So that's the two sides. And the calculations that both sides perform will come out vastly different. One of the things that they cannot agree on is the age of the earth. And many people have heard some of these ideas and arguments, and you can spend your entire life trying to figure out how old everything is, and here's what I know, and this is the only fact that I can stand firm on is this: nobody knows. Nobody knows. You don't know. I don't know. None of us really know. On one hand, some people, they come up with these ideas of how old or how young it is, and any conclusion is ultimately based on assumptions that were based on other assumptions that were based on other assumptions. And so we look at this and we don't really know. And we read scripture and we see things, we see evidences, but we don't really know all the details about it, because here's the thing. The main purpose of the Bible was not to teach us science, but here in your notes, the focal point of the Bible is Jesus. Like that's really what it all points to. I've heard even people who follow Christ fighting and hating each other because of differing opinions on the creation process. And I'm like, nowhere in Scripture does it say that you have to believe a certain prescribed idea around creation in order to get into heaven. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And so that's the bottom line here. Everything in Scripture was leading up to the birth, crucifixion, resurrection of Jesus Christ, and it all is there to tell his story, not to simply be a science book or a mathematics textbook. But still, there's a lot that we have extracted from Scripture, and there's a lot more to be learned from Scripture. So the two main arguments are out there is that many people believe that that we live on a young earth that is only around 6,000 years old. That's what many people, believers of the Bible, what many of them will say. On the other hand, other people say that the earth is around 4.5 billion years old. In fact, if you ask almighty Google, that's what Google says. 4.5 billion years old. Ultimately, what it comes down to is this: it doesn't really matter. Like, what difference does it make in the grand scheme of things? Again, there's a gap between Genesis 1 and Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2, and we don't know how much time elapsed there. We have no possible way of knowing that or understanding it. Here's what Job says. Job is the oldest book written in Scripture. Again, the Bible is a compilation of books. Job is one of them, and even though it's not the first book in chronological order, it is the oldest. And look what it says in chapter 38, verse 4. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Where were you when everything was created? Tell me if you know so much. Who determined its dimensions and stretched out the surveying line? What supports its foundation and laid its cornerstone? As the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. Where were you, Mr. Scientist? Where were you, Mr. Anybody? Like, where were we? We speak very authoritatively on things that we don't have adequate evidence, and when we do so, that becomes dogma. Another argument that is often made when we discuss creation or the origins of the universe is how long did it take? Right, if you read the Genesis account, it says, or it implies at least, that it took 6 days. 6 days, and on the seventh day, God rested. And so many people on the scientific side say, how could that be? How could all of this be created in only 6 days? How can we see light from stars that long burned out, millions of years ago, but because of the travel of light, we see the light of a star that doesn't even exist any longer? How can this be? Is this a literal 6 days, or is it not? So here's the thing that I just kind of think about when I ponder these things, is if God is creating a universe with trillions of stars and planets, is he basing the time off of the rotation of the planet that we're on or not? Like, I don't know. Like, I can't answer that question. Like, he says a day, but I don't know. Like, is this a day like our day? Like, in the Bible even it says to God, a day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is to a day. Like, I don't know. Is this figurative? Is it literal? I believe whenever I read scripture, I want to take it as literal as I possibly can each and every time. I would rather fail on taking it literal than taking it, subjectively. But here's the thing. I don't know. I don't know what he was basing it on. If here's God, and he's creating this huge universe, he's like, I'm going to base time on this right here, this little speck in the whole thing. That's a day. I don't know. Was it a galactic day? Was it a universe day? Was it some other kind of day that we have no idea? I don't know. I wasn't there, and neither were you. Here's the thing that I do know, is this. If God could create everything with a word, as he said, let there be light, and there was light. If God could create everything with a word, he could do it in 6 days, but he could also do it in 6 seconds. Or he could also do it in 6 billion years. Like he could do it however he wants, and ultimately we don't really know, and yet we get so frustrated about these things. Speaking of time, you know what the most accurate clock is in the world? Anybody know what the most accurate clock is in the world? It's an atomic clock, okay? I'll answer for you. An atomic clock. Atomic clocks are the most accurate. They have some others that are kind of coming close, but the atomic clock, the way an atomic clock works is it measures the microwave frequencies from an atom, and they say that it's so precise it will only lose 1 second of time for every 100 million years. That's how accurate an atomic clock is, okay? So think about this. There is a clock that we have that is based on like this small, tiny thing, an atom. Something that we've actually never even seen with our own eyes. But we have a clock that is based on that. Now let's think about a cosmic level. On a cosmic level, well, one thing that we know of is we know of a light year, right? A light year. And this is the distance that light travels in a year. Let's be clear. A light year is a measurement of distance, not a measurement of time. But yet we know exactly how far it goes. It's very precise, 186,000 miles every second. This is how they determine now the distance of a meter by dividing what a light year is, okay, if you can fathom that. 186,000 miles per second. It's consistent. So we can set our clock by that. We can set our clock by an atom. Think about other things that we set our clock by. The rotation of an earth is a day, right? So every day, the earth rotates. Every 24 hours, the earth rotates. That's pretty cool. Like, it just rotates. It's consistent. It always has been consistent, at least in our known history. And then, not only does it rotate, but the earth also rotates around our star, the sun. And how long does it take the earth to go around the star? A year, 365.25, 365 and a quarter days it takes to go around that. And every 4 years, those quarters add up, and we end up with a leap year, right? So that's how that works, if you didn't know that already. It's consistent, though. We can set our clocks by it. We can set our calendars by it. So the earth rotates every 24 hours. The earth goes around the sun. Now, you know how fast it's going? The earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. And then the earth is rotating around the sun at 66,000 miles an hour. And then the sun is traveling at 483,000 miles an hour. And the sun is doing its own loop around the galaxy, which takes 230 million years to do. It's called a galactic year. That's how long it takes the sun to go around our galaxy. So why am I saying all this? Because think about this. We're living inside a clock. Isn't that crazy? Like we're from the molecule to the planet, to the solar system, to the sun, to all of these things. It's like we're living inside a pocket watch. It's like think about that. Now think about this. If you came across a clock, what would you think? I mean, like, oh, you know what? A bomb must have went off. And out of the bomb came a pocket watch. Out of the bomb, out of the rubble, came a Rolex. See, in your notes, our universe is a precise clock that keeps perfect time. It's like a timepiece. No one sees a watch and assumes an explosion. You see a watch, and what do you assume? You assume that there was a watchmaker. You assume that there was a craftsman. The average Rolex has 220 parts. Who put those together? They don't just light off cherry bombs and Rolexes come together. See, there is a craftsman that puts them together. So the first assumption when you see something that's created is that there had to be a creator. As it says in Hebrews chapter 3, verse 4, for every house has a builder, but the one who built everything is God. So ultimately, the age of the earth and how long it took to make it doesn't really matter. Really what matters is who created it. Really, that's what it matters. Now, the alternative view to this is the Big Bang Theory. Although leading physicists from Princeton now say that today's Big Bang Theory is a kind of patchwork of disconnected ideas. So their solution is called the string theory, which is like multiple Big Bangs. And there's more patchwork of theories and disconnected ideas. And in order for string theory to be true, you need to have infinite parallel universes. And you need to have 28 dimensions instead of the 3 dimensions that we currently have. And quantum gravity, which is unproven, has to be a thing. And more things that all have to line up. So much so that if we're honestly truthful about the issues that the Big Bang and string theory actually no longer even qualify as adequate science, but they've evolved into religion. Because we believe something without adequate evidence and experimentation. We believe it because, well, we can't accept the fact that there's a God, so we have to come up with another solution that could have maybe gotten us to the same point. See, honestly, if we're truthful about this, it takes a huge amount of faith to believe that there's no creator. In fact, I believe it takes more faith to believe in the probability of something happening by chance than it does to think that there was a creator behind it all. See, because all of these theories, there's no reasonable, practical way for them to gather any evidence to substantiate their claims. There's a lot of assumptions that are going on here. In your notes, it takes more faith to believe in a universe made by chance than one made by a creator. In Romans chapter 1, verse 20, it says, for ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal powers, and divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God. Underline that last line. So they have no excuse for not knowing God. See, we can see his handiwork. We can see it. We can see it in the beauty of creation. There must be an artist behind the beauty. There must be an engineer behind the engineering. There must be a master craftsman behind all of creation. All of it leads up. All of this stuff leads up to building this marvel of mechanics. A clock that is unparalleled, that is far more accurate than any clock that humans can come up with. The complexity of our earth and our solar system and our universe is beyond comprehension. And there's all these rules of science, these rules of physics, these rules of astronomy. But no rule exists by chance. Even, in your notes, even claiming that there are laws in the universe demonstrates a need for a lawmaker. See, laws don't just form themselves. Laws always need a lawmaker. See, who determined this law? Who determined that things were going to operate in the way that they would? Now, all of this still falls a little bit short. Because here, what we're left with is a giant mechanical clock. We're left with atoms and stars and lights and planets that can keep time. And that's great. You wind it up and it goes and it goes and it goes. And that's great. But God went a step further and he creates life. See, the earth is the only planet known to host life. In the universe, they estimate that it contains 100 to 200 billion galaxies. 100 to 200 billion galaxies. Now, first off, I'm like, that's a pretty wide range there. 100, it's like if you're buying, say, a small house, and it's going to cost you, say, $100,000, but the realtor is like, come to closing with $100,000 or $200,000. It'll be one of those two. Like, wait a minute, that's a vast difference between the two. And we're like, well, there's 100 to 200 billion, not stars, but galaxies. In fact, the Hubble Deep Space Telescope examined a point in space, I believe it was in the Big Dipper, the size of a pinhead held at arm's length. So imagine the size of the pinhead held at arm's length, and the amount of sky that is blocking, they counted thousands of galaxies in that space. Not stars, but galaxies of stars. Scientists estimate that there's 1 to 10 trillion planets. I mean, again, what a vast range here. It's between 1 and 10. Like, okay, thank you, brilliant scientists, for telling us that. NASA's counted and confirmed 5,000 of them or something like that. But here's the thing. If life is random, it is unlikely for a planet to actually be able to sustain life, let alone to be able to actually create it. If the Earth was 10% older or younger, it couldn't sustain life because of the gravitation, the gravity on it, because of the magnetic fields, because of the position to the sun and the position to the moon, and having enough elements on the earth to sustain it, and the atmosphere, and the size and the position of our planets in relation to other planets, and then the fact that we have this a very similar temperature year-round. Yeah, it gets cold here in the winter and warm in the summer, but neither is enough to totally annihilate mankind. And the interdependence of all living and non-living matter, and the fact that the radiation isn't too high. And we could go on and on and on about the fact that we live on a planet that was amazingly created to support life and life in abundance. If all of these factors were vastly different, life on Earth would be just entirely impossible. And the odds of all of these factors coming together at once is so small that it's beyond the ability for our minds to even comprehend it. And that's just creating the environment. It's not even creating life. That's just the environment for life to exist.